I'm doing, I'm trying to help you solve problems, because it's nice when you've got a teacher to show you what's doing it. But when you're home alone and you have these, who do you go to help? So we're starting solving problem techniques at the very beginning. The first thing we did was take the disk out and put a new one in. Now she's hit the return key and nothing's happening, is it? Okay, let's see if you can solve problems for me, Suzanne. What would be the next step that you would try to do? You know the disk is probably pretty good. But when you hit the return key, nothing happens.
Probably turn the computer off and try it again.
That's just good. What else do you do, right?
Yeah.
What else can you do? That's exactly right. If it gets frozen up, the best thing to do is turn your computer off and then turn it on again. Now, I want to show you a different way to do this. There's a couple of ways that we can turn our computer off and turn it back on. One way is called a hard boot. And you'll want to write this down in your notes, students. A hard boot is when we actually turn off the computer and turn it back on. Now, that works out fine, and it's not very difficult. And we've already done that. Most of you just flipped that up. There's another kind of way that we can restart our computer that's much easier on the system. This method is called a soft boot. And what a soft boot does is it allows us to restart our computer without turning the power off. And then that power and juice doesn't have to go through the power supply and through all of those things again. And so it's much easier on the computer. It's also quite a bit faster. So if you freeze up, a soft boot is the best way to do that. And on your screen, let me tell you how you do a soft boot. You're going to hold the Alt key down. It's the ALT, and I'll show you where that is in just a minute. Plus, you've got to hold the Control key down. And on the screen, it's Control-Alt, and that's the way it is. Control and the Alt key, and then the Delete key. So let's locate all three of those keys real quickly. Let me pull this up, and we'll kind of find them here. Okay, on our keyboard right here, we've got all three keys. Some of you may have a reset button on your machine, and that will do the same thing as a soft boot. But you'll find that the Control key is right over here by your Shift key. Here's your Control key. And when we do this, we don't just touch it and let it go. We actually hold the Control key down with one finger. The Alt key is located in this position. It's an ALT key. And again, some of you with a different machine, it might be in a different location, but that's the Alt key, ALT. And notice how I'm pressing them both at the same time. Now, the Delete key is in a different location. It's on the other side of the keyboard. Now, in this case, it's right here. Some of you, it will be up here on the side, up on this side. But for us, it's a DEL key. It's right here. And you'll have to press all three of them at one time to get it to soft boot. Again, the way you do it, hold the Control key down and hold it, hold the Alt key down and hold it, and then press the Delete key and just tap it, and your screen will go black and it will go through and restart for you. Okay, I would like all of you to practice a soft boot right now, if you would. Let's go ahead and give this to you, and then that'll solve your problem. Now again, if you've already turned your machine on, a soft boot is much easier on your machine. So try that first. If it doesn't unfreeze or still won't do anything from that, then go ahead and power down. If you power down your machines, you'll want to be sure and leave the power off for approximately 5 to 15 seconds so that all of the power can leave all the resistors and stuff before you turn that power back on. So again, if you have to do a hard boot, leave that power off for 15 to 30 seconds or so and then turn that back on, and that will help you out. Now, did the soft boot work for everybody? Everybody found the Control Alternate Delete? Yeah? Yeah. Not too bad. We're already learning lots of fun things. Okay, what we want to do today then is learn about DOS. What is DOS? What does DOS do for me, and why am I going to spend a lot of time learning about DOS? In fact, 2 weeks of our class is devoted to that. DOS stands for Disk Operating System. You'll need to know that. Disk Operating System is short for DOS. But what does that mean? What is a disk operating system? Well, let me show you. I'd like you to think about a train. Let's use Wendy for a second. Wendy, here's the microphone so we can hear you. Let's assume that I had a lot of coal that I needed to send to San Francisco from the area here. I decided I wanted to do it with the train. what would be the process that if you were in charge of the coal, what would you do to get that coal to San Francisco? Who would you contact? What kinds of things would you do?
Well, first you'd have to contact the railway in which
Okay.
you're going to put it on.
And then just take the coal down and let them take it, huh?
Mm-hmm.
When we sell the coal to someone, we'd probably have to have someone down there pick it up when it gets there, correct? All right, notice how easy that is. The railroad has made it real nice, so all we have to do is take the information or the load of data or load of coal that we want to send to the railroad station. It takes care of all the other things. But those of you that have ever been to San Francisco know that there's a couple of things that have to take place. And that's why I would like you to liken DOS to a locomotive or the engine and engineer of a train. Let me show you what happens. When we take that coal down and we dump it into this car, someone has to start the train and get it going towards San Francisco. They need to know when to make switches in the lines so that the train will go where it's supposed to stop and go. And there's a lot of details that have to be worked out that, as far as we're concerned, sending the coal, we don't worry about. We just let somebody else do that. Well, with the computer, we have the same thing. We have to have the computer start up, get on the right track so that we can know where it's going to go, so that when we tell it we want to do Word Perfect or Lotus or one of our other programs, it can say, okay, let me get you there, and it just starts taking you and driving you where you want to go. That's why DOS can be likened to this train. So that's kind of what that's like. Another example for DOS would be if you were having a party and you were able to have maids and butlers and all of that. They would be a part of the party, but they just kind of come and go. They take care of the platters and making sure they're taken care of, taking coats from the guests, etc. You never really see them, but they take care of all the nitty-gritty things that make a party a success. Similarly to DOS. DOS takes care of all the nitty-gritty things so that we can just give it our loads. Now, what we're going to be learning in this class is Word Perfect or Lotus, and we can call this data if we would like to. I'm just going to write WP here for Word Perfect, but it's like loading this car here, but someone still has to drive it. And those are the kinds of things that we're going to learn today. Now, the kinds of things that have to do with the computer that we need to learn to drive is which disk drive are we communicating with, the A1 or the B1? How do I copy files from one disk to another disk? How do I back my files up? Those are all things that we need to have to be able to take care of from this. And that's why we do it at the beginning of the class. It's a real natural time to start with that. So let's try it. Let's do some commands in DOS and see what they're like. The first one that I would like to do is a directory. dir. Now all of you should be at the A prompt right here. And again, the A prompt is telling me that I'm talking to the A drive or the left drive. Now when you read from left to right. So when you have disk drives on your computer, the A1 is your left one, the B1 is the one next to that, C, etc., and you can go that way. If you'll think of it in that context, it will help you remember which is the A and the B. But when we're at the A drive right here, that tells us we're all ready to go. dir tells us what kind of files are going to be on our disk. Oftentimes we need to know what kind of file is here. Is this the disk that has the file that I need? Directory is like a phone directory. When you need to call a phone number, you pull up the phone directory and open it up and find the name and look up the telephone number. It's a telephone directory. This is going to show us our files. Let's try that. Let's go ahead and have you type in dir and press the Enter key. And let's see what kind of files we have on our disk today. Okay, you'll notice that it just zooms through all those files, doesn't it? It really goes fast. As we look at these files here, let's go ahead and type that on to make sure we can see. And it doesn't matter whether it's capital letters or small letters. Okay, you can see all those files going through there. Okay, let's try. Just put dir and stop for a second. Don't hit the return key, Suzanne. Okay. Now as we look at this right here, you'll notice that she's got it in small letters. There we go. See how how we've got the A colon there and the dir, so we can see that real easily. All right. Now again, backspace on this, Suzanne, just a little bit, and do it in capital letters now. You can do it either way. The computer doesn't care whether it's capital or small, and as soon as you hit the return key, it will list all of those files. Okay. Now that we do a list, let's look and see if we can find what kind of information this gives us. Here's a name right here, and you may have this one on your screen. You may have some others that will give you the same information, but this is the name of the program, Mode.com. Mode is the first name, then you've got some spaces, and then the last name of the file, sometimes called an extension. This is how much space your file is taking. This is when it was created and the time that it was created. So all of this information about your disk is given to us when we go dir or directory. It also tells us how many files are on our disk. And this right over here is telling us how much space we still have left on our disk right here. This becomes important when we start to fill up our disk with information and whether it's too full or not. So let's write some of those instructions down. Again, dir then is going to give us the following information. Number one, it's going to give us the names, the amount of storage, the date, and I'm going to put date and time as just one. What else is it giving me, students? What's at the bottom? The number of files. That's right. Number of files. And then the last thing that it'll do is show us how much space is left on our disk. Now, I'm going to put a 2 right here rather than write it down here, because the storage right here is how much space each file is taking, but it also gives us how much space each individual, or how much space the disk has left. So that's the information that our directory will give us. Pretty slick. Can you see that DOS is not a foreign language? It's just a few things that we have to learn. And if we can learn what those commands are, then we can utilize our computer a little bit more easily. There's a couple of other commands that we can use with our directory. I'd like to have you write these down, and then we'll practice with them. If I want to, with the directory, I can add a /w. Notice on the screen that I have dir, which gives us a directory. I have directory/w. And I have directory/p. Write each of those 3 commands down, and let's look at them and see if we can determine what the difference is between each of those concepts. All right? Everybody, let me look and make sure everybody's getting some directories up as we look through here. Okay. Nicole, let's go ahead and work with you for a second again. Now again, the purpose of learning what's on our files is because as we're looking for files or storing files, we need to know which disk it's on. So down at the bottom of our screen here, we're going to have you do the same thing. You'll remember that directory gives me a list of all my files, doesn't it? Okay, let's go ahead and have you put in directory/w. Now the slash is going to be tricky, and the slash is going to be like the divide key. On our keyboards, it's going to be the one facing like this. Notice the direction of the slash on this one. You press this other slash on the other side, Nicole, which is right here, and let's show them the difference. See how one of them is close to the R key, and the other one goes the opposite direction. Now hit your backspace. Okay. Notice how it has to be this direction. If it's not that direction, it's not going to understand it. Okay, with directory/w, and you could have a space after the R. It's not required, but it is acceptable. Now go ahead and press the return key. Okay, now as we look at this, tell me how this is a little bit different than the one before. Can you see any changes in it, Nicole?
It's not as long.
Okay, it listed all of my files all on one sheet, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Did it not list some of the information that our other directory command listed?
It doesn't list the date or the time.
Okay, That's exactly right. A /W, an easy way to remember what that does is stands for wide. In other words, it's going to give us 5 columns of information. Here's the first column. Here's the second column of names. The third column is over here, fourth, the fifth, etc. So this makes it so for disks where we have a lot of information, we can look up files much faster using this type of a command because it doesn't go so fast and makes it more concise. Pretty slick. All we have to do is add the /W and it works really good for us. Again, the /W stands for wide and gives us 5 columns. Okay, let's do the next one. Let's see what the difference is between the directory /W and the directory /P. The /P is used a great deal on hard disks. Those of you in the viewing audience that have hard disks will love this one. Okay. Now, what did it do?
It stopped.
It stopped, didn't it? In other words, when you give a directory with a /P, it's going to list the whole screen full of all the information about the file, the names, the storage, all of this. But as soon as the screen is full, it will automatically stop and let you look through those files. And then what does it tell me to do?
It just says strike any key.
Okay, go ahead and try it. We'll try it. And then it will continue on listing the rest of the files. So again, for those of you with hard disks, you've noticed how fast it is to fill a lot of files in there. And now when we do a directory /P, it will stop it long enough so that we can see that.
Okay.
Now I wish there was a way, and I have a hard disk so I can say this, I wish there was a way that we could have the computer automatically pause for me and give it to me in a wide sequence so that it was across here. So let's see if the computer will allow that. Let's see if we can add both together. Okay, let's do a dir again. A /W and then a /P. We're going to combine the two commands together. Now, before we even do this, what would you suppose it would do for me, Nicole?
Probably both. It'd probably go across, and then it would stop.
Okay. Let's try it and see.
Okay, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, just try it. Now, in our situation, it went wide. We don't have enough disks on our disk to make it so that if it goes wide, it also fills the page. But it would do that. Again, those of you that are working with hard drives, if you were to do this kind of a command, it would list all of your files on your drive, plus 5 wide, and stop as it fills up the page. So that's kind of a nice way to look those up. Okay? Good job. Any questions with directory then? All right, so far so good. Okay, now a computer isn't very smart. I've mentioned that earlier. In fact, there's a couple of stories that I've heard about how a computer works, and I thought I'd explain it to you to help you understand what it really can do without it. I was in Hawaii for a couple of years, and I enjoyed my stay there. And when I came back, Hawaii Five-0 was one of the big shows. So I enjoyed watching Hawaii Five-0 because they'd be zooming on a thing, and I'd say, I've been there. And they'd say, oh, we're going down Kalaniani Avenue. And I'd see this thing, and I'd say, that's not where they are. That's not right. But anyway, there was this one instance where Wang Fu, I think, was the Chinese fellow that was so wicked all the time. But anyway, he captured one of the agents, and they found him dead by the ocean. And when they looked at him, he had cotton, it looked like, in his ears and his nose and on his eyes and all of that. And they thought, what is going on with this? But all of a sudden, all of their secrets from the United States were being discovered by the Chinese, and they couldn't figure out how they were getting them. Well, McGarrett got caught. You know how it all goes, and the story's good. And come to find out, what they would do would be to cover his mouth so that he had no sensation of taste. They would cover his eyes with this cotton stuff so there wasn't even a sensation of touch when they covered it, and covered his ears. And then they put him in a diving suit and lowered down into the water so that he was buoyant, so there was no gravity, didn't know what was up or down. And they made the temperature of the water so that it was equal to his skin, so there was no sensations at all. None of the feelings that we're used to as far as weight and up and down and hot and cold and bright and all of these were totally taken away. Come to find out, this is how they'd break all the agents. Just a couple hours in here and they'd go crazy and spill the beans and all of this kind of stuff. Well, what do you suppose happens? Here's McGarrett stretched out in this tub, and nothing's going on. So they bring him up after a couple of hours, and boy, he's wide awake. No way is he going to say anything. And they go, boy, he's a tough guy. And I was going, I know that. I liked McGarrett. So they put him back in, and after a couple of more hours, they pull him out, and he's a little groggy and stuff, but still wide awake, and so they put him back in. Well, what I'd like you to assume is that your computer without your DOS operating system would be similar to this McGarrett down in this situation. You might have some data, or as far as we know, he could have been in there writing the best symphonies that have ever been written, or the best poetry, but there was no way that he could communicate or pass that information to anyone else. He was down there. He couldn't talk. He couldn't hear. Dano broke in, and there was this big fight and everything, and he was just in there. He had no idea that he was being saved, but they pulled him out, and he was fine, and everything was really good. But this is similar to your computer, and why DOS is such an important aspect as far as what we're using. So we have to learn some of these basic concepts. All right, one of the other things that I'd like to talk with you is to teach you how to use, to print things off of your screen. All of you that are here, you'll need to turn your printers on. Go ahead and reach up, and there should be a button on the side, and I'll switch over and get this one for you, Suzanne. But we're going to try and print some of the things off of our screen. Now, what we have is a character that we can use, and it's called a print screen key. Those of you that have the newer versions, it's up in the top right-hand corner. Let me see if I can find it over here. Up by your function keys, it's going to be right next to it. It's a key all by itself, a print screen, and it'll actually have the word print screen. For those of you that have the other keyboards, your print screen is by your shift key or your return key, and you'll notice that there's two characters on it. Let me kind of show them where this one is. Here's the print screen right here by my shift key. It has the PRTSC on it, and so that's how you'll know that it's the print screen key. Okay, Suzanne, I've got a question for you since I've got this. You'll notice that as I look at this print screen that this key has two characters on it. It has an asterisk at the bottom and print screen at the top. How would I get it to do the print screen command?
You probably have to push shift and then the print screen.
Okay, you'll remember from yesterday that any of our keys that have two characters on one key, in order to get that, I have to hold the shift key down, even if the caps lock is on. So let's do that. Now, what a print screen is going to do for you is actually take a picture of your screen and just dump it to the printer. Okay, now we have 3 terminals hooked up to one printer. We have a little black box here that lets you know which one of you is hooked up. And we have little numbers next to it, like your A, your B, your D, A, B, D, etc. And for us, I'm going to switch this to A, which lets me know now, since I've switched this, that you're hooked up to the printer. So go ahead and hit your print screen. You'll have to hold your shift key down and then just tap the print screen. And you can let go, and it'll just start printing. It'll just take a picture of your screen and dump it off onto your printer. Okay, so the rest of you, go ahead and print that out. Those of you in the viewing audience, print your screen out. When this finishes here, I'll switch it to B, and you can go ahead, and when you're done, then we'll go ahead and have Wendy do hers. Okay, is that working for everyone? Oh, it's nice to have it work. Okay, what we'll want to do is show you what it does and how that is working, because oftentimes we'll want to be able to utilize this. Okay, as we're looking at my screen now, as you hit the print screen, you'll notice that the cursor will actually go right along this screen here and show you what you're taking a picture of. And it'll do exactly what's on your screen, and that's all that it'll do is on your screen. Now, the reason for this is I've got a disk here that'll show us why we learned this. I probably have approximately 200 disks in my office, and it's hard for me to keep track of which files I've got on which disk. I now know by using the directory command that I can pull a disk out and put it into a directory and look up a file if I want to. But it would be nice if they were all written down on the cover so that I knew which files went with which disk. Well, we can do that. We could do this by hand. We could write them all down and fold it in with our disk and put it in here. But a much easier way is to let the computer do that. That's what I'd like to show you how to do right now. We're going to make a little file folder for our disk so that we can see that. So let's use this. Okay. Now, we're going to do a little thinking with this, maybe. See how it works. Okay, Nicole, tell me what you've got on your screen right now.
The menu or whatever it's called.
Okay, the directory, right?
Yeah.
And it lists all of the files that's on my disk. Okay, notice how she's given a directory /W. Remember the last command we gave it included the /W, so that's like this. Now when you send that to the printer, what's going to go to the printer now?
What's on here?
A list of all your files. Now, go ahead and hold this for a second.
Okay.
I can come over to my printer now and tear that off, and with my scissors I can cut those files off and actually take that to the cover of my diskette. And that makes it so that even if I have a lot of files, I can find out which files are. Now you'll notice that it's so long that it can't do it, so all I do is just cut it in half and just tape the two pieces to it. Now when I'm looking for some tests or some outlines and it's on there, I know I can just flip through it and find it here, and it'll give that to me. So that's the way that you can keep track of your files a little bit. All right, good job. Kind of easy. It's kind of fun to get the printer going too. Notice the print screen is a command that's used in DOS to communicate with my printer. The purpose of DOS, again, is to help me communicate from my disk drives to my printers to my screens, and to give me some information that I'm going to need. Okay, there's another command that I'd like you to learn real quickly, and that is the command, what if I give it a DOS command and then I decide I don't want it? Let's do a directory, and then I want you to press the Control Break key. The Control Break key. Now let me show you where that is. On your keyboard right here, on ours, you've got a break key that's written on the bottom on the scroll lock key right here. Can you see how that's written underneath that? And when we press it, we'll hold the Control key down and then just tap the break key, and I'll show you what that does in just a minute. Okay, everybody found it? For those of you that are using the other command, your break key is on a pause key. It's right up here by your function keys. It's the last one. But again, written on the side of it is written the word break. Now, if I give the computer a command in DOS and I want to abort that, I can break it by holding the Control key down. Do a directory /P. Go ahead and just do that, students. A directory /P and return. And that's going to give us a DOS command. It's going to pause. And when it stops and it says strike any key, now hit your Control Break key. And notice as soon as you give it that Control Break key, it's just going to break out of that command and stop immediately. So on your notes, be sure and write Control Break will abort or stop my DOS command. Now we'll cover some of these others. Now you can see that these commands are real simple and quick to use. Tomorrow, as we're working with these, we'll start to learn how to copy files from one disk drive to another. We'll learn how to format disks so that they will work for us. And we'll continue to learn some of those concepts that we use when we're using a computer, so it's really usable for us. Now, some of you are probably saying, oh, can't we start typing files in and typing and using word processing? It'll come, take your time. But for those of you that have your own computers in the viewing audience, you'll know how important it is for us to have these basic skills so that we can manipulate and work our computer the way that we want to. All right. Again, as we finish up today, let's review what we've talked about. We've learned that the disk operating system, or DOS, is required on all our microcomputers and needs to be there so that we can work with it. We've learned how to do a directory which finds the files, which files are on our disk. We can do it wide with 5 columns, or pause if we've got hard disks, or combine them. We've also learned that we can use a print screen and dump any of the information off from our screen onto our printer anytime. This can be done in any program. If you're in WordPerfect or Lotus and you want to just dump the screen off, you can use your print screen and that will work out fine. Tomorrow we'll continue on with a couple of other commands like this. We'll learn how to format. You will need to bring a data disk tomorrow, or a blank disk, so that we can format that. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining us today.